Estate and CX, the UK's #1 estate agency podcast discussing the future of estate agency, entrepreneurship and business with hosts Mark Burgess and Rob Brady. So in this episode of Estate and CX, Mark and I have a general catch up and see what's going on, what we're doing, how Iceberg's getting on, what we see in the market. So I hope you enjoy this episode. So Mark, I think it's September, October time?
Yeah, we're just coming up to October, yeah.
We've had a couple of episodes in the past. We've just briefly caught up, what's going on, what we're seeing. Obviously, we've got a lot going on at the moment for us at Iceberg. EX9 coming up, a couple of the Accelerator programs coming up.
Yeah.
How you finding the market at the moment?
Yeah, it's good. It's a funny one, really. I seem to be talking to a lot of agents and seeing quite a big split happening in the marketplace, whereby I talk to some agents and they're having a pretty good time of it. Some of them even breaking some of their records. And I talk to the next one expecting to hear the same thing, and they're sort of bordering on bankruptcy. It seems like the main difference between the two are that it does feel like estate agency is finally sort of reaching that stage whereby you need to be more than just sticking your property on Rightmove. Like that's sort of suddenly catching up with people. There are agents out there now that have been working on building their own databases and being able to be transparent with their sellers about who they've got looking specifically for that house in that area, and another agent going in just saying, yeah, we've got buyers, just it doesn't seem to be cutting it anymore. And the weird thing is like that's obviously you can do that in life cycle, but it's not exclusive to life cycle customers. We've got some life cycle customers that aren't actually going and showing people their database, and they also suffer. But it does seem to me that in the current market you've got agents that I think most agents have probably got a bit of a cash flow issue, just in the sense that end of last year was very quiet in terms of sales, and so therefore exchanges were quiet. Sales have picked up. That people are wanting exchanges to hurry up and come through, so that the cash flow picks up. But for us, it's been a good time. Very busy with people moving over to using the CRMs, the websites, the event obviously that you mentioned coming up is always a great day whereby we get to see lots of people, life cycle clients, Iceberg clients, and non-clients. So looking forward to that. By the time this comes out, that event will probably have already taken place. And so I think a lot of people have had a summer holiday, reflected on a lot of things, as happens at most summer holidays, and have sort of decided that the last quarter of the year is really a good time for them to get themselves in shape for 2025, whereby I think most people feel like it should be a better year for them.
Yeah, I think like interest rates dropping and things are sort of changing up in the market. Election now done and dusted with, despite what politician you think's best.
Yeah,
I think it's just certainty brings it back to a little bit of the market.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the US is still a bit all over the place at the moment, and that tends to have a bit of a knock-on effect to us. Some days they talk about mass meltdown over there. Some days it seems like it's quite promising. So I don't think you ever really know what's going to happen in the US. But in terms of the UK market, it certainly seems like it's. I feel like throughout my time in the property sector, which goes back 30 years, you have these not necessarily boom bust cycles, but you have like lulls and peaks, and the peaks tend to sort of start taking place before you've even really realised that it's started taking place. By the time you realise it's taking place, it's all a bit too late. Everybody getting involved, and you're about to have another lull.
Yeah.
My gut feeling is that that's actually the undercurrent of that is starting now.
Going what you coincide what you were saying about agents, some agents doing really well and some agents are, and I've noticed it just generally. You see it online, but also just the clients who are doing exceptionally well are the people who have really invested in their strategy, really invested in their marketing, really invested in building that sustainable model of like a machine, rather than, the only way I can describe it is like, are you maintaining your car to perform, or are you maintaining your car when it needs to go into the garage because you haven't looked after it?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that, but also I think that obviously the most of the clients that we get to deal with a lot are customers.
Yeah.
And I can even see a big split between those. The majority of our customers are, like you say, they've taken on maybe they've bought, go back to the analogy of cars, they've bought an SUV in life cycle because they've got a dog, kids, and they move things around. It's really useful and it helps them get places. And some people have bought one and it's just a guy who lives on his own and he's not using it at all.
Yeah.
And you quickly see, like, you get to see the insides of a business that isn't using life cycle properly.
Yeah.
And you're desperate for them to embrace it. Obviously, you more than anyone, because you're one of our coaches that are helping them with that side of things. And then you just watch them go out of business, and it's mad. It's total madness to see that. Like, if you keep working in this backwards way, it's not even backwards. That's too offensive. Out of date. You keep working in this out of date way. You've come here for change because you're struggling. Possibly you've left it too late already, but you've come for change because you're struggling. We've given you this, and you have continued doing what you were doing before. So now what you're doing is spending some more money, and then you go out of business. And it's a crazy thing to watch. It's a crazy thing to watch. But of agents that I know personally, and not all life cycle customers, one or two of them were life cycle customers. I know more agents in 2024 that have actually gone out of business and shut down than I can think of any year in the past 30, even back to 2007, 8 times. And more agents that I've actually seen inside their systems, because they're obviously using our softwares, that are just breaking records. And that's why I'm talking about this sort of, Grand Canyon that seems to be actually running down the middle of the industry.
What's really interesting in like, we've got a State CX9 coming up, and probably by the time they said this is out, it would have been probably beyond that. But obviously we've got Dan speaking now, and I came across a clip that we did at a State CX6, I think, in Soho, and Dan came and presented there.
Daniel Priestley, yeah.
Daniel Priestley, and he in his presentation he talked about it was the wave, and in the 2020s, because bearing in mind that EAX6 was like 18, 19, so before the wave, and he said in the 20s, and we're now almost coming up to next year being halfway through the next decade.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to think when you're watching that, thinking, oh yeah, but we've got a few years away, and it's like, where did that go? And he talked about in the 2020s, he was talking about technology, he was talking about people. He said there was going to be changes in how people operate and work, and he said all of a sudden you're going to get this wave. It's going to be you're riding on it, or you're going to be someone that's going to go. It's going to go, and all of a sudden you're like, well, how did that happen?
Sweep your way.
And it's being always in the mindset, because you see this big great divide that we've said over the last few years. It's going to start to happen in whether you move with the modern times of how the world is working. Like Lisa Novak, I think you commented on something over the weekend, like well-known Australian agent, forefront of it. She's been on Ariat, wherever it is, all the big conferences, and even she put a post up saying, are we stuck 20 years in the past?
And the thing is a state agency, everything affects a state agency later. So it's not even hard to predict what's coming for a state agency. Like, when Dan talks, Dan's a futurist, and he was talking from the forefront of all businesses, not just a state agency. And that was happening. That's been happening in all businesses from the start of the 2020s. But state agency is always 4 or 5 years behind. So it's easy to see what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because a state agency, just as an example, the rest of the world has already got comfortable with the fact that I can just employ people in Pakistan, Turkey, Africa, America, wherever. they're all just sitting there waiting. It doesn't have to be somebody that can't speak English. You can have somebody that speaks perfect English. You can have an expat. And gradually, we're getting to the stage whereby, the minimum wage is becoming a global minimum wage. That hasn't affected a state agency yet, but it's going to. Why do you have to have someone sitting in your office to do sales progression?
Well, we had Paul from MMP only last month where he was talking about he's employed someone in South Africa doing property management.
There you go, right? And we've just done a podcast before with James Allen, who's talking about how from when he started working with us back in 2018, 19 times, started building his database and has now reached the stage whereby like all of that has really started paying off, and he's got a ridiculous database, business just coming in on tap. But what's that, 6 years, 5 years? Like the gap's going to start getting much, much bigger because you've got people that are preparing for what's coming, and you've got people that are waiting for it. So whilst you might not have agents that are en masse employing people in South Africa and whatever it might be, most agents aren't even set up for it because their system doesn't even work on the web, or it doesn't even work if you're using a Mac or something like that. Like they're not even thinking about it. They can't even transition to it if it did happen. Whereas you've got another group of agents that are looking at really they're fine tuning things. They're going like, oh, how do I get my Google ads performing a little bit better? They've got through the stage of wondering whether building their databases is going to work. They're through that stage. They're a few years down the line now. They're seeing the results of it coming back round. People that once upon a time would have just been considered time wasters are now coming back out the other end as business where they didn't even have to do anything because they've been nurtured and spoken to in their database.
Just even going on James's one, like he said, he bought another business and plonked in and did the same strategy that he had before. He said it works the same results. Way.
And we've seen it. We've seen it hundreds of times. We've done it with hundreds of businesses. That's why it's even more frustrating when you get a business that commits to doing it financially and doesn't do it.
Yeah.
It's I guess I understand why it's difficult. Any change is difficult, but literally what I'm seeing in this last probably 3 to 6 months is that it's now pretty much going to be life or death. Like, you're going to have to pick a path, and that path shouldn't be, well, we do all right, we'll just stick it on Rightmove.
Yeah.
Like that isn't going to be the path that works.
Yeah. Under Stay CX, we've got our Accelerator programs coming up soon.
Yeah, so with the start of 2024, we launched a business accelerator program. So the purpose of it isn't to teach people how to be estate agents. What we found was that most estate agents probably come from a background of working in a corporate or something like that. Like they know estate agency inside out. They started their own estate agency, and that's all great. But where they never had specific training was on how to run and build a business. So once their business gets beyond the stage of, it's just something that they do, and they want to turn it into a bit more of a machine, something whereby either they can get a bit more of a passive income, or they don't have to go out on every valuation, or even they might want to retire, or even sell it. They need to start to understand some things that they don't have access to that information. I know myself because I went through that journey. Of building businesses just to make money, and then one day thinking, I don't really know how to build a business, and it's a bit frustrating. So the mentors that I worked with, we pulled them together, and some other people from outside of that, and we put together a 12-month program that if you spent time with those mentors individually would cost hundreds of thousands of pounds to do it, whereby somebody can pay less than what they would pay a junior member of staff and work with some of the most valuable people that they're ever going to interact with in their lives, to learn about how do you actually recruit the right staff? How do you keep all that on track while you're not even there? How do we as a company, Iceberg, have a remote team working in 3 different continents and it works like a fucking machine? Like, how is that possible? How do you really get your brand to work without you having to do every single thing? How do you get your operations to work? How do you read your people? How do you get valuations to work? How do you get other people to do valuations, marketing, all of that sort of thing? So we launched that in January 2024. We have about 25 agents in the room, probably 10 different companies, something like that. And as it's gone on, other agents have obviously seen it and said, "Oh, can we get involved?" But we do it on an annual thing. So, January we will release or start the class of 2025 on the 18 cores it's called at the moment, and
what I've
that'd be
loved about it
interesting.
is like going back to what you were saying briefly, like the first few sessions, someone thought they were coming for brand, and they were thinking about doing, the feedback is I thought I was going there for colours and logos, and I came away with like the heart of my brand and understanding it from the emotional side. Even your most recent one, I thought I was coming to sales, and it wasn't sales, how to make phone calls and stuff. It was the psychology of selling, and we come away with like how do you actually sell in the psychology of it. And then obviously going forward, I've got a performance one next week, but that would be done. And then we've got Marianne Page, and she's like
operations specialist. They'll love that. I mean, the thing is like you can't know what you're going to, because if you did, it would be a waste of time.
Yeah.
So even though you're familiar with the words, it might teach you about core values, or it might teach you about recruiting, or it might teach you about brand. You can't know what you're going to get taught, because some of these people are like some of the best in the world at this stuff. They're going to teach you stuff you don't know, and it's going to unlock a whole load of stuff in your business, which is what we found with these agents. And it's wonderful to see people transferring their mindset from an estate agency to a business, and you can see how they're just going to, just fly after that.
And then before we wrap up, because it's always a nice little short episode, one bit of advice you'd probably give to any agents out there for what to do by the end of this year.
Someone who's using Lifecycle, or someone who isn't?
Just anyone listening out there, apart from saying use Lifecycle.
Okay, let's break it into two parts. If you're an Iceberg customer, you need to make sure that you are following the path that we've set out for Iceberg, because Iceberg and Lifecycle are two different things. Lifecycle is a software that helps you to fulfill the things that Iceberg are talking about. Iceberg is about helping agents to transform the way they work smarter, and build real businesses. Part of it is software, part of it is coaching, part of it is websites, part of it is the Accelerator programs and all that sort of stuff, and part of it is networking with other agents. So if you're a Iceberg customer, I would say start talking to Rob, start embracing the whole thing with Iceberg to learn what am I supposed to be getting out of this software and how is it supposed to be working, what do I need to change, if you're not already doing that, and talk to some other agents maybe that do it. If you're not an Iceberg customer, then I would say that you should be making sure you make some significant changes at the end of 2024 for 2025, rather than one of them things whereby, I'm going to get myself sorted for 2025, and you just fuck around with a Microsoft Word for a few weeks, and before you know it, it's Christmas, and then it's 2025, and basically nothing's changed. Put the hammer down, make some actual changes, and let's see what we can get out of 2025.
Yeah, good advice there.
Cool. Nice talking to you.
Thanks for listening to this Estate Agency X podcast. Can you make sure that you're actually subscribed to this podcast channel if you liked the content? It helps us massively to get better guests, and it just helps us generally. So you might think you're subscribed, but just have a double check, whatever your podcast platform of preference is, that you're actually subscribed, and then that way we can continue to grow the channel and get better and better guests for you.